So Greg, or should I say GreggieJ?
Stanley, that's up to you. Greg is pretty formal, but honestly, most people today are getting to know me more by Greggy J. And let's face it, at age 71, Greggy J is a lot more fun.
I definitely want to get into the whole age-defying comeback story, as you call it, through Challenge 200. But I think it would help if our audience would know a little something of your background. Do you mind if we go back a little bit?
Not at all. Let's go.
You come from a very quote-unquote blue-collar background in the Midwest, am I right?
Yes. And Stanley, I was brought up in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, went to school, college in north central Wisconsin. And my parents, they didn't have much, but we didn't know any different. So, when my dad, he worked 39 years for the same company. And here's what's cool, the same job for 39 years. And Steny, I never remember him missing even one day of work. And if that's not enough, he worked 4 days a week on a second job. And we were taught, my brothers and sister, myself, we were taught work ethic. And we didn't have much, but we never complained. We didn't know any different. We lived in about 1,000 square feet, maybe 1,100. It was a duplex, and we lived on one level. There was a family lived above us, and six of us in 1,100 square feet. But we thought it was wonderful. We didn't know any different. I felt a little sorry for my sister and my mom because we only had one bathroom, and they had to deal with four males. But anyway, Steny, yes, very blue collar, but we learned a lot.
Now, you mentioned the work ethic and the discipline that was taught to you by your parents and your grandparents. Is there anything else that stands out to you during your early years?
Absolutely, it does. So, anybody who's a football fan knows that if you're brought up in Wisconsin in the 60s, one name comes up: Vince Lombardi, the head coach of the Green Bay Packers. We were Packer fans, but that's not the significance. What stands out to me are the things that we learned from my parents, but really from Vince Lombardi. He wasn't just a coach, he taught discipline. He did things with his players that most people today wouldn't even consider. Here's the other thing: he lived with five principles in his life. I know all five principles. He had a big impact on my life. One of those principles, I drive people crazy with it. It's called live by Lombardi time. 15 minutes ahead of the rest of the world. He was significant.
Man, that's awesome. So let's fast forward a little bit to one of your bigger physical accomplishments. Can you tell me about what happened to you back in 1984?
Oh, I sure can. 1984. Think about it, 20 years ago. My job transferred me up to Washington, D.C. So I knew there was something going on in Washington, D.C. every November, which is right around my birthday, and it's called the Marine Corps Marathon. So I got transferred in January, and I set a goal that I was going to run the Marine Corps Marathon in November. Now, Steny, I ran a little bit now and then. I would run 2, 3, 4, 5, not 5 miles very often, mainly 3 miles. But I set a goal to run the Marine Corps Marathon, and I did. And during the training effort, which was really a lot of running, I remember running in a 10K in downtown Washington, D.C. in the month of September, a couple months before that marathon. And my goal was to run the 10K under 42 minutes. Something I can't even imagine today, or back then I couldn't even imagine the thought of doing it back in January. Here it is September, and I'm thinking about doing a 10K in 42 minutes. I missed by 4 seconds. 42:04. Pretty awesome though. Now, I did finish the marathon, but 3 weeks and 2 days before the marathon, I got in a pretty bad car wreck. A truck, the driver fell asleep. We were stuck in traffic on the highway. I-95, any of you watching who know Washington, D.C., I-95 is a mess going north into Washington. Well, he fell asleep. He pushed the back bumper of my little Plymouth Champ to within 4 inches of my back seat. Thank goodness for the seatbelt and the headrest. Saved my butt. But I remember the doctor telling me, that was at the emergency room, he said, Greg, you're going to have to lay off of quite a bit of physical stuff for some time until your back gets a chance and your neck gets a chance to be healed. I said, Doc, I've got a marathon coming up in 3 weeks and 2 days. And I won't do anything until then, but I'm not missing that marathon. And I did finish the marathon. Maybe not quite as fast as I would have liked. It took me 4 hours and 8 minutes. And I really wanted to break 4 hours. But we completed it. Even the thought of being able to get close to 42 minutes was incredible. So although I missed it by just a few seconds, I was so excited about the fact that I was in such good shape that I could do a 10K in the hills in Washington, D.C. in almost under 42 minutes. I was okay with it.
After the experience with the car wreck and after your first marathon, did you ever find yourself doing another marathon after that?
Oh, great question. Nope. It was so much work. Now, I did a lot of other things. I did triathlon sprints, quarter-mile swim, 18 to 30-mile bike ride, and then a 5 or 10K run right after. I did a bunch of those in the early to mid-90s. I also did the Atlanta half marathon 3 different times on Thanksgiving Day when they were running that. But that was the extent. I said, no more marathons.
And I remember you did tell me that you were beginning to see some declines in your physical workouts right around that time. Can you talk about that? When did it start happening?
Yeah, I'll give you an idea. I started experiencing some problems with my knees back in the early 2000s. And so I had to back off of my running a little bit. But I'll share with you an event that took place in 2006. My brother, who's 2 years younger than me now, he's an athlete. He's done 5 full Ironmans. 5 full Ironmans. For his 52nd birthday, that's what he did. He went and did an Ironman. 2.4 mile, in the lake swim, 112-mile bike ride, and a full marathon after. Unbelievable. So he comes down to do the Thanksgiving Day half marathon in Atlanta with me in 2006. We're about a mile and a half into the run, or slow jog, whatever you want to call it, and I slip off the curb and sprain my ankle. Now, typical to my family. I said, Gary, you just go right ahead. He says, get your butt up. We're finishing this thing. So my brother, he stayed with me the whole time, and we completed the half marathon, and I was on a sprained ankle. As soon as we stopped, we ran and got some ice, stuck my foot in some ice because it just blew up. But that's the way we did it.
What was beginning to happen to you around the time of COVID?
Well, one of the things I noticed after about 2009 or 10 is I just didn't seem to have the same amount of stamina. When you're 20 years old, 30 years old, 40 years old, maybe even 50 in my case, you really don't ever think about what it's going to be like to have your body just decline on you. Well, I started noticing that the body was declining, even though I was working out on a regular basis. But the body started to decline. I couldn't run as fast. I couldn't lift quite as much. Things didn't happen. I played some golf, and golf ball wouldn't go as far. And I started feeling the decline. Well, at about the time of COVID is when I noticed I started having problems with my legs. I started having a lot of pain from my knees down. Now, my knees always had a little bit of pain, but this was different. Well, I come to find out that it was nerve pain. And that nerve pain originated in my back. And Stenny, it got bad. I mean, I could barely walk by the time we got to 2022. And I noticed most of it started at about the time of COVID. So although I was declining for about 10 years, even though my workouts kept me going, the back just finally gave out.
So when you felt that first bout of pain, why didn't you do something about the pain sooner?
Oh, boy, do I think back on that right now. So first, I didn't know what it was. And as I said, back in 2006, when Gary ran the half marathon with me, we were just, as Michelle says, we're Janickies. And so we just do what you do. I just kind of thought I'd get through it. Well, what I learned and found out was that it doesn't work that way. Come to find out that the reason my legs were feeling so much pain was because the nerves in my back in the canal between L4 and L5 didn't have any room and they were being pinched. So I didn't have back pain, but I had horrible, horrible leg pain. So why didn't I do anything before that? I guess it's because I just thought that I could train out of it. Well, as I learned, there was no such thing as training out of this kind of pain.
So when did it get really bad for you? Like when did you realize you had to do something about it?
Probably it was definitely toward the end of 2021 and into 2022. That's when it started getting real bad. I mean, I couldn't do hardly anything on the elliptical. I found that my workouts were fewer, my intensity was substantially less, my desire to do it was very little, because mainly if I got on my elliptical, my legs were so sore, I just couldn't keep going anymore. And so really 2021, 2022, and we got down to the end of 2022, and I said, I've got to do something. I can no longer live like this.